Yeah, it's nice.
I need to do some more shameless promotion, I guess.
You do. I think if I haven't seen that ad, you need to do more of that.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome to Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet. I am co-hosted by the not quite black enough AD Robles.
Not at all, man. I couldn't believe that.
Right? AD was not allowed in a group because he did not have a high enough percentage of blackness.
I don't know. It was crazy. I sent out a newsletter about this the other day. It was like I was in this group for months, like probably a year or more. Mm-hmm. And I never spoke about social justice because I knew I'd get kicked out instantly if I did that.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like a preaching group. It was a black preachers group. And then somebody asked a question about expository preaching. And I answered. And somebody noticed my name. And they were like, "How did you get in here? You're not black." And I was like, well, I'm 20% Nigerian, that kind of thing. And I had like 2 or 3 defenders that were like, "How could you question his blackness?" Yeah. But then by the end of it, they kicked me out. I was not black enough.
Oh, man. Are you okay? Did you recover after that?
Oh, yeah. So I had a feeling I was going to get kicked out. So I recorded it all live when it happened. It was hilarious.
Nice.
Hilarious.
Very nice. I was thinking about that after you shared that. And I was like, why people don't do that? We're not like, "Hey, man, you are so white," or "Ooh, you're a little too tan. I don't know if you can hang out in our group." Right. Those conversations don't happen.
That used to happen, but that was back during the racist time. That was the dark times and everyone.
Did no one even get a tan back then?
I mean, I don't know. Well, there was always I'll never forget. I was watching this prison show once in college. I think it was called Oz. And it was about this white supremacist gang in prison. And the guy, I guess he got beat up or something. And he ended up getting like a skin graft from a black guy. But you couldn't see the black skin. It just he had it. You could tell he had it. Mm-hmm. Or no, you knew he had it, but you couldn't tell.
Okay.
And because of the skin graft, they shunned him, even though you couldn't tell. He's like, "No, you've got a little bit of black skin in you. You're not allowed in our club anymore." So that was like the most backwards thing ever back in 2006. Mm-hmm. But here in 2020, we're way smarter and we're way more sophisticated. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. So if you guys are watching wherever you are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, if you want to put a little message in wherever you're listening to this, we will get it. But you will not be able to see the messages if you're not on the same platform. I've had some people ask about that before. We are also only doing a 30-minute show because my dad's coming into town and I got to go pick him up at the airport. So we will be ending a little early and having a shorter show for those of you who listen on the podcast or on YouTube later. So let's just get into it. The first thing I wanted to start with was a question from you guys. This was on our Instagram direct message. Someone was asking, he and his fiance are engaged, 19 years old, and they're feeling really discouraged that people aren't kind of supporting it. And he wanted to get our advice and our thoughts on it. So, AD, do you have any words of wisdom for our young listener?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, if it sounds like it's just about the age, it's not about anything else.
Mm-hmm. That's what it seems like. Let's just assume that.
Yeah. So if it's just about being too young to get married, that really is an unfortunate situation because it's just not true. There's plenty of people that get married right out of high school, and there's no biblical reason why you can't get married right out of high school. It just doesn't make any sense at all from an age perspective. If you're both, 19 or 18, whatever it is, that's a perfectly legitimate time to get married. If there's other reasons, like, they know you better than I do. I mean, I don't want to venture a guess into what other reasons there could be. That might be something that's worth hearing people's advice for. But my advice is that you look at the scripture like we do with everything. Is there any reason in the scripture that an 18-year-old could not get married to another 18-year-old? I just can't imagine what that would be.
Right. Yeah. Or a 19-year-old. And this guy has a full-time job, I should add. So he can provide. Right. He's a plumber. It's a good job. Yeah. You could definitely make it work.
Definitely can make it work. And again, I'm not saying that if there's other things that are going on here, like maybe the woman you're marrying has got 3 kids already kind of thing, and maybe they're like a little bit concerned about you in that situation. Like, okay, there could be other things. I'm not saying that there couldn't be reasons why you might want to take a step back.
Yeah.
But the age itself doesn't seem like that. There's really nothing wrong there.
Yeah, absolutely. Although if you do have 3 kids, 19, then there's some problems.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like there could be
Right.
other things going on, but if it's
Mhm.
just about age and that's it, I don't really I don't have any advice for like convincing people, but it's just like there's really nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah,
In fact, I'm going to encourage my sons to get married young.
Yeah, I think honestly, it forces you to mature a lot faster.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot more time, enjoyment spending with your kids.
Yeah.
Like the people that have kids older in life, there's a lot of people say, oh man, I'm just too old now. I can't do this, play sports with my kid and do all of those things. That's a consequence of not having kids until you're like 30s and such like that.
Yeah.
And even true with myself, I'm 35 and I have a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, I still am starting to feel it. I'm like, oh man, if I have another son, like I'm going to be like in my 40s and my back's going to be broken and stuff.
Well, it sounds like you and I are on the same page, like based just about the same, age. We probably started having kids and stuff. And I got to say, like, there's the myth is, and I really do think this is a myth, that it's fun to be single when you're in your early 20s. And, there's aspects of being single that make it easier kind of in the short term to be single in your early 20s. But there's nothing like fantastically fun about it. There's nothing magical about it. There's nothing that you won't be missing out on anything. Like, right. I know that's the lie. Oh, you gotta have your fun when you're young. And that's just a myth, man. That's just a myth. I've lived it. I've done all kinds of stuff, and I've lived the fast life. I've gone to the clubs. I've done everything. You know what I mean? And there's really nothing. You won't be missing out on anything. If I could go back, do it all over again, I would not waste my time, living the singles life in my 20s. You know what I mean?
I feel like it's the equivalent of, or maybe like when you eat candy. Like, yeah, it could taste good at first, but if you eat too much of it, you get stomach ache. You might get a sugar rush. You enjoy it, but you're not going to be able to sustain a life. You're not going to be full of joy if all you're doing is eating candy. To me, like marriage and spending time with my kids, the joy is like a prime steak. It satisfies, it's delicious, you enjoy it, and it's going to be beneficial to you, and it's going to make you stronger and grow you and those kinds of things. And so, candy is good, like for a while, but there's nothing beneficial to it over the long term. And like, if you just are eating candy, like you're just going to run into problems. You're going to get cavities, your health's going to break down, things like that.
But it's amazing too, because candy is kind of similar to the singles life. Like, you think it's going to be fun. Oh, great. I'm going to go to the bar. It's going to be great. And it's fun for like 20 minutes. That's the same thing with candy, to be honest. Like if you sit there and eat candy for 20 minutes, the first 10 minutes are going to be all right. And then after that, you're going to feel, how it is.
Skittles, man. Skittles, the first few bites are fantastic. After you're done eating the pound bag, you're like, oh gosh, this is gross.
I could just imagine you eating a pound bag of Skittles.
Maybe this is king size. I don't remember what it is. I just always remember that. I used to love like the first bits of Skittles, but then afterwards it's like, well, all tasting the same anyways.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, for the age is really irrelevant to me.
Yes.
It's the maturity level. And I'm sure I would tell maybe 2 30-year-olds that were engaged that they weren't ready, depending on the circumstances. Yeah. I know some 30-year-olds that don't have a full-time job right now, thanks to government unemployment benefits. Yeah. But I would say that even if there is nothing wrong and you guys have a great relationship and maybe your parents aren't for it, maybe your pastor's advising against it, it might be just wise to wait anyways. There may be something you don't see. Maybe there's some things you don't see in yourself. And especially if her parents or your parents are not supportive of it. Marriage, I hate saying that marriage is hard because that's kind of a negative, but marriage is a forging of 2 people together. And that forging creates sparks. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's all good if God's the center and you're handling it biblically and you're seeking him and things like that. But you really want your parents and her parents supportive, being there for advice. You don't want any bitterness, animosity, or any kind of like where you guys don't see each other, a break of the relationship or anything like that too. So even if everything's great, the relationship's good, there's nothing to hold you back, there might be just some wisdom in waiting and winning the approval of both of your families, if that is an issue as well. I don't know. He didn't say that specifically, but so don't be discouraged. God has this all in control. Pray about it, get wisdom, get advice. And man, you're 19 years old. There's a whole life ahead of you. So that's my thoughts on that.
Good stuff.
All right. The next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is driving me crazy, I'm seeing people argue this all the time. It's that the government goes too far if they treat businesses and churches differently. And they're using this kind of the argument of like the Nevada case where the Supreme Court ruled that churches can't meet, but casinos still can meet. And they're saying, oh, that's wrong. That's egregious. How can casinos meet and churches not meet? How can there be X amount of people gathering for casino, but not, or it's limited to churches? And it's like, the argument is if the churches can't do it, then the businesses can't do it. And if the businesses can do it, then the churches should do it. And there's this like equitable argument that they're making that the churches and the businesses are the same. And I just think that's a really losing argument. Have you been hearing that too?
Oh yeah, that's the big thing. That's what Big Eva is pushing on. It's when it's unfair, that's its own problem, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's not the argument we should be making, not even close.
No, not at all. And I was trying to think of this biblically and like how do you kind of express this? And I think just from a biblical perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was kind of just thinking about this today, is that in the spheres of authority that we talk about, the government sphere, the church sphere, and the family sphere, that in biblically back in the day, business and enterprise and your profession was all under the family sphere because it was a family thing. You had it was agricultural. You brought your herds as a family. So I would think a biblical case is that the business is an actual family sphere. Even if you work for a corporation that isn't owned by your family, you as the head of household are working to bring in money, revenue, and capital for your family. So I still think it applies today. And the church sphere is obviously its own sphere, the church sphere. So they're two different spheres of authority, and we're just totally missing it and like railroading over the differentiations between it. The church cannot be treated like a business. It's not intended to.
Right. Yeah. And I think that this is especially important and also especially sneaky because I think you would agree, Matt, and I would definitely say that the casinos shouldn't be closed either. Like the government shouldn't be closing any of these businesses for this, like, so I'm not saying that like we shouldn't be treated the same in the sense of, they should be closed and we shouldn't. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying these are completely two different realms of existence. They're, like you said, the spheres of authority. We need to recognize those things. And so the argument of treating them the same completely disregards that. They both shouldn't be touched, but for kind of separate reasons. Sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not like just nitpicking this argument because I don't like the argument and there's better arguments to make. It's setting us up for future problems. We're going to be losing future arguments because if, for example, the government says, hey, we're no longer going to have in-person meetings, you have to order everything online for the next year. And then they say, oh, well, we did it to businesses. So your church, hey, you can't meet for another year later. Using your argument, you can't say anything. You're out of position. You lost.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly right. Because it would not make it any better if you said, okay, casinos, you're shut down too. The church was complaining and now you're shut down too.
Right.
Like that wouldn't make it better at all. So why even go there? Why even argue that? But the thing is, though, that these people like Russell Moore and a lot of the folks that make that kind of argument, they actually do think it would be fine as long as everyone's shut down equally. And I reference these other things that are open. I reference abortion clinics. I reference pot stores. Stuff like that. I reference that, but not because I want to be treated that way. I reference it because the government knows that you don't have to close. It's just all about what they want open. Like if the coronavirus was the most dangerous thing since sliced bread, the pot stores wouldn't be open. That's why I reference that. Not because I want to be treated like a pot store. It's because I'm showing you that you have no clothes. This is stupid. You know what I mean? We all can go to the grocery store tomorrow. It's not because I want to be treated like a grocery store. It's because I'm showing you how stupid this whole thing is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We got Mike Trimble saying married at 19 as a little encouragement. 35 years later, still the best thing that's ever happened.
I know a lot of people that were married at that age, and they all recommend it. And I said, listen, I'm glad I married my wife. So I'm glad I waited, to get married later in life because of her specifically. But if I could do it all over again and end up with the same wife, I would do it way earlier.
I 100% agree. And, just to go back to it, I know we've kind of already left the topic, but I forgot to say this, is the objection I hear a lot is there's so much changing that happens between your 19s, 20s, and early 20s.
Right.
Yes, it's true.
Right.
But there's a lot of changing that happens through the rest of your life. And especially as Christians, we are always wanting to change. It's called sanctification. Right. We are constantly changing and hopefully becoming more like Christ and less like ourselves. So, I mean, part of being married is kind of getting with it and understanding that you guys are changing and hopefully together towards Christ.
There is a lot of changing that happens, but the thing is, like that changing doesn't just go away if you're single or married. Like, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so if you're there and you have a wife and God said it's not good for a man to be alone, and you are alone and you're changing. Look, I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's probably better for a young man who's changing to be there with his wife, to change, to be there with him.
Yeah.
What I don't like. Yeah, I get that. Yes, there is changes, but what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You know what I mean?
And like even the changes that I've had in marriage, being married 9 years now, the changes have been better because I have my wife with me.
Right.
Like she makes me better and helps me change more Christ-like and become more Christ-like than if I'm on my own going through experiences and changing. It's emphasized. It's just,
let's face it. Like, does the changing stop when you get married? Of course not. So it doesn't matter if you're 40 or 50. Like,
right.
Like you're going to be, there's always changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, are we expected to, okay, we're changing until 30, then we get married, then we stop changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we never change again. And we just sit on the couch and we play our video games and watch the news all day. Like, I mean, we're not supposed to have that life anyways. Like we're supposed to live a life of faith where we are growing and, all that stuff. Anyways. Yeah. So
whatever.
Well, you brought up the Baptist. So we got to talk about the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary statement. You talked about it earlier on your show, which I highly recommend if you do not watch A.D. Robles. What's wrong with you? Where have you been all your life? They did something very strange. They put on their website, and they expect all faculty and students to sign a covenant and commitment to basically, here, I'm going to read it right here.
Pull it up. Because Matt, when you sent me this, I honestly, when I told you that it had to be fake, like I wasn't really joking that much. Like I was joking a little bit because how stupid it would be if somebody faked that.
Yeah.
But that's how stupid I thought it was. It's like, there's no way this is actually real.
I know. Totally. Okay.
Real.
Let me see. It is real. And I it's so real that it's so outrageous, I should say. Yes. That I was okay. We can see it. I'm just going to pull it up like this. Can you read this?
Yeah, I can read it. It's perfect.
Okay, great. So this is so outrageous that I had to verify with the source where he got it from, where the source got it from. And then finally I was able to like talk about it and share it with people when I saw it on their website, because if there was ever going to be a deep fake, it would have been this.
Something like this
for sure. Okay. So this is, again, everyone is going to be required that works there, teaches there, or attends there to do this, to sign this. And I also heard they're also going to require them to get tested and bring the results to this seminary.
No, you have a choice. No, Matt, don't misrepresent them.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You have a choice. You can either bring your test with you or get tested there.
Yeah. Which is a big HIPAA violation. You are not supposed to have to share any health information with anybody but your doctor.
But hey, that's interesting. I like
they should sue.
Well, I'm not telling anyone to sue, but it would be interesting if it happened.
No, I'm telling them to sue. Why not? It's an organization. It's not a person, right? Isn't that what they tell us?
It's more than an organization. It's never mind. Go ahead. Keep going. Just go.
Okay, let me read this before we get into any more trouble. Okay, so I'm going to start halfway down. It says, or into the paragraph. We enter into this covenant together, and in this season of the coronavirus with lives and health at risk, we affirm together that we will follow and obey all rules, policies, advisories, and practices required by the government authorities, mandated by our institutional responsibility, and communicated by institutional leadership. All rules, policies, advisories, and practices required by the government authorities. So, if the government comes along and says, hey, you need to shut down, they're going to do it. And they made a covenant, so they better not break it.
So here's what I here's what I think about this. So I signed a contract that was vague once, an agreement that was vague once, and I ended up losing a couple $1,000s because of it. So I learned my lesson early in life. You know what I mean? It was vague enough that, you know, I had a point. They recognized that I had a point, but they're like, yeah, but, you know, what are you going to take me to court? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. So this agreement, this covenant they try to encompass everything. It's like, okay, policies, rules, practices, like
suggestions.
And then they put the word required in there and I think that they put that word in there so that you kind of it makes it seem like, oh, it has to be like official though. But that's not what it says. It says any practice, any rule, any policy, whatever. Yeah. And it's like, any government authority. And it's like, okay, well, who's the government authority? Well, I don't know. I mean, the Bible says government authorities, but doesn't really define it. Is Fauci a government authority? I guess he is. We pay him. And, he got on the TV the other day and he said we need to wear goggles. He didn't say we needed to, but he said that we should, and he's in authority, and that's a practice. So it's like, at any time, you could be in violation of this, and you have no idea because you didn't read it that way.
Right.
This is a very stupid thing for anyone to sign. I can't imagine anyone reading that and being like, oh yeah, I'll sign that. No problem.
Well, you'd absolutely be foolish. You would absolutely be foolish to sign something like this. And going back to your contract, I mean, that is just common sense where if you ever enter into a contract with somebody, you want to understand fully and have exact details of what you're agreeing to, especially when it's something in perpetuity. There's no timestamp on this. There's no expiration on this. Yeah. And they're already talking about next year and the relapse and things like that. Is this just going to be forevermore whenever the coronavirus kicks back in? Which coronavirus? The 19, the 1, the 10, the 1? Like, it could be any of them.
I wasn't even thinking about that, but it's so true because they didn't even. And it's funny that you say that, Matt, because I noticed they didn't say COVID-19, which I thought was interesting because that's when you're hoity-toity like Southern Seminary is. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're very hoity-toity. That's how you talk about it. Coronavirus is actually a lowbrow way to talk about it.
It's one step above the corona.
Exactly. And then the bottom of the barrel is the Rona. Right. Right. So it's like the lowbrow way of saying it, but that makes it even worse. It's even more vague because think about it. Like is not the common cold a coronavirus? It is. So anything that they say to even a common cold, you have to do it. You just have to do it. And it's like at any point, this is like people always, have you ever read the book? I think it's called 9 felonies a day. And it makes the argument that every person in the United States commits 9 felonies a day. That's how many laws there are.
Yeah. Federal laws.
Yeah. Right. And so I don't think it's 9, but it's some crazy number. Anyway, the point is that at any point they can say, oh, you're in violation of your covenants. Like, why would you sign this? Who would sign this? Who would be okay signing this? And the worst part is that if you break it, now all of a sudden, not only are you breaking the covenants of the seminary, but you're also before God breaking a covenant because they tried to make it extra official by putting that verse in the beginning. Out of context, of course. And why wouldn't they?
There's one thing they missed, though, to make this really serious. They didn't put gospel in front of it, a gospel covenant.
Yeah. Gospel. They should have. That actually would have been the only thing that could have made it more serious and more solemn. Solemn is a good biblical word. Solemn.
Yes, that is good. And I bring this up, and oh my goodness, do not look at the comments. These are terrible right now. I don't know what's going on.
Look at it. These people are making fools of themselves.
They are making fools of themselves. And I bring this up not because it's just a statement maybe, but they're asking people to sign it and enter it as a covenant. And it's a theological seminary. Like, they understand what they're doing here. They're not fools.
Right.
Well, they are fools, but they're not doing this ignorantly or because they don't get it. And I just have to ask, Like, who would want to go to a seminary
Yeah.
that is doing these kinds of things,
Right.
that is making this kind of mistake?
Yeah. Honestly, like I wouldn't even I was saying on my channel today, I was saying, okay, let's say they were more specific and they said, you need to do these 4 or 5 things to come. I still wouldn't submit to it, but at least I could understand how someone could. It's like, okay, yeah, I can wash my hands and no problem. I can wear a mask, no problem. But this is just open-ended. It's just like you'd have to be dishonest or insane to sign this.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to know, if you were honest with yourself, you'd have to know that, no, I'm not going to just obey everything. That like, I'm not, that's crazy. Or you just have to not be able to read properly. I don't know. I mean, or you just treat it like you treat a software license agreement where you don't even read it.
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
But the point is, though, the seminary is someone made the point earlier today that said this is a liability thing. The seminary is putting this out, making you sign it, so the liability for anything that happens is on you, because they told you. I mean, they said this is what you need to do, and that's almost even worse.
Right.
If it's that, it's even worse.
Yeah, and it absolutely is. Well, so I don't know how you teach at this school anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd want to be associated with this school, and I definitely don't know why you wouldn't want to go to this school. And boy, do we ever need a new seminary. Right?
Who are these friends of yours, man? This is pretty.
They're your friends, not mine, man.
Are they?
I don't know. I don't know who they are.
They probably are.
Yeah. Or maybe it's on. Yeah, it is Facebook. I'm going to have to go. I tried blocking them. It's crazy, man. Luckily, this will not be seen on the show. The last thing I wanted to hit, because again, we're doing a 30-minute show, is this statement that the Grace to You guys put out. It was, I forgot his name. Dang it, I had it. Mike Riccardi. He's the one who put it out. Now let me get back to it because I had to scroll away. There we go. So he put an issue and he said there's a key distinction that a lot of people are missing, and he differentiates between the sin issue and the liberty issue with talking about attending churches. And in the sin issue, I totally agree with. He talks about how what we've talked about, that you cannot listen to Caesar to determine if you open the church or not again.
Which is good. And we got to give him credit for that. That's a strong statement, and I appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. I absolutely love what they've been doing the last couple of weeks. I think they've grown themselves. Talk about always growing, right? I mean, I don't remember ever them talking like this whatsoever. And I could have just missed it. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but I just never saw it. But then they talk about the liberty issue. And I think this is important to talk about as well, because they said that elders may decide because of their conscience that the deaths, the cases or whatever in their area may require them to close. And I just want some more developed discussion, and I'd love pushback. I even commented on this, and I'd love pushback from them to kind of think through this some more, because the things that they're claiming on the first issue of the government overstepping their sphere of authority to tell the church what to do, they're kind of doing in the second one with the family. Because if they're making, like what we've talked about before, if they are claiming that the church has the authority to tell people not to meet because of health issues. Well, we have said that the health issues are with the head of household. If you're sick, you don't come to church. But when there's people that are healthy, then you're keeping them from doing what God has required of gathering together.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think I told you this in a private chat. I was like, exactly what this guy said. That's kind of where I was in the beginning of this when it first started. And then as the information came out and we realized what this was and all that kind of thing, I've kind of changed and adjusted. And it's like, well, actually, the church shouldn't be making the decision for you whether or not you can gather on the Lord's Day. Like, that should be your decision. And the church shouldn't hold that over on you. So they shouldn't make that decision for you one way or the other. They shouldn't say you have to come or you're not going to come. And the thing is, like, the only option for that to be okay is for the church to remain open. Now, I understand that you might not want to remain open. You might be too scared because of the coronavirus. But the thing is, like, I don't want to sound like callous, but like, heavy is the mantle that you've taken up to be a pastor. You know what I mean? Like one, you will not deny that one of the things that God commands elders to do is to lay hands on the sick. And it's not like, if it's not that contagious, You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so how can you lay hands on the sick if you're not even meeting? You're not even keeping your doors open. Like, how are the sick supposed to know where to go?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like that. Like, how can you do that? How can you fulfill your duties if you're social distancing as a
Right.
pastor?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So like, I get it. I get what he's trying to do there, but especially in this situation, it's not like, yeah, you're right. We've got to respect the spheres of authority, even in the second, level of this.
Yeah, even with the families. And because what's
Right.
happening is you're taking their decision away from the heads of household.
Right.
And don't we already have a problem with men not being men and taking responsibilities for their
Right.
families in this country?
Right.
Like, at least we need to have that discussion and talk about it, develop it, work through it, and use it as a discipleship opportunity where maybe instead of saying, oh, we're just not going to have church, where we actually say, hey, head of households, this is a disease, this is a sickness. Let's talk about it from a biblical perspective and what your responsibility is under God to keep your family healthy and to keep the church that you're going to healthy as well. Instead of just saying, it's up to the pastors if their conscience. I just think it's a really great opportunity for us to uphold and establish men in the head of the covenant.
And I'll admit, I know you have to go in a second, but I'll admit that I've been a little squishy on this from the beginning of coronavirus. And I know that there are pastors that I've talked to, people that I respect very much, that were telling me that I was being squished on that. And they were like, no, like a pastor needs to be willing to put themselves in harm's way. Mm-hmm. And they can't force people to come if it's dangerous, but they have to be there. Like that's their responsibility. They're the ones that are supposed to be praying for the sick and doing these things and preaching the word. Like it's a risky job. It hasn't been that risky in the United States for a very long time, but it actually is a risky job. Mm-hmm. And so I see their point way more these days than I used to. And I'll admit when I'm squished, I'll admit it. And I've been squished on this.
Man, I'm hearing you say that makes me think I've been squished on it too. Could you imagine us being squished on things? I guess even A.D. Robles and Matt Williams could be squished on things.
Don't let it get to your head.
All right. All right. Well, anyway. With that, thank you for all those who are joining and the inappropriate people that I'm about to block. Even I appreciate you.
Yes, I do too, because it actually helps the algorithm when you comment like that.
It does. You guys are really helping us. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you for all those that support us on Patreon. We'll look forward to a full episode next week. Talk to you later. God bless.
God bless.